I'm going to go ahead and create a quiz to show you how this works. I'll click on Add Quiz. This is pretty basic stuff. We're going to name the quiz. We can add instructions here if we need to. You'll notice here at the very top there are two tabs, one for settings, one for questions. We're going to go over settings first, and then we'll talk about questions after we've gone through all the configuring this stuff. So if I scroll down here, here's the quiz type. By default, it should be set as a graded quiz. There are other types of quizzes here, and I touch on this in the course curriculum following this video. Here we can specify the assignment group. I'm going to make sure this is in the exams group for proper weighing of grades. Now a little bit lower, these are options that are specific to exams or quizzes. Here we can shuffle the answers. This is a nice way to kind of protect the integrity of your course, if so students can't just share the answers with one another very easily. However, if you are accustomed to using multiple choice questions where the answer has to be something like both A and B are correct, this will actually mess that up. So if that's the case, don't check mark that. You can add a time limit here if you'd like to. You can allow multiple attempts if you want. And then here are the options as far as what you're going to allow students to see after they have submitted the exam. There's an option to show either one question at a time or to just have it all on one page. If you have a very long exam, anything more than 20 questions, I would suggest not having this marked. The more questions you have, the harder it can be to navigate back and around. If you are planning to lock down each question after they have answered it, then you want to go ahead and mark this and make sure to lock the questions after answering with that checkmark box there. There are certain quiz restrictions. We can allow a password or an access code here if you want to only allow students in who know the password or proctors in who have the password. That's where you specify that. You can filter IP addresses if you know the IP ranges of proctoring centers or where you want to allow that quiz to be, the exam to be accessed. You also can require lockdown browser by Respondus, which we have a license to on campus, so that is a possibility. And then finally down here at the bottom, we do have options to specify the due dates and the availability dates. So the due date makes sense if you specify a specific due date. Students can still submit the exam after this date, but it will be marked as late and you'll have to manually grade that. The availability from and until is kind of important because this is the range of times or dates where a student can actually submit the exam. So if they begin the exam on December 19th at 11:58 p.m., and they expect that they're going to have 90 minutes to take the exam because maybe that's how we configured it, the exam will automatically submit itself at 11:59, even though they started it a minute ago and supposedly have 60 or 90 or however many minutes to take the exam. So just be aware of that. This is like the lockout date. If they are in the middle of taking the exam and this time rolls around, it's going to shut them out and it'll grade what it can, and anything that it cannot grade, it will give a 0. There's also a way to moderate this to where you can allow certain individuals in your class to have multiple attempts or to have more time than other students. And we'll get into that when we start talking about moderating quizzes. So now that I've got this configured, you probably want to save this quiz before you start tweaking on the questions and building those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now since I have my exam configured and named and everything the way I want it, now I can go back into it and add the questions. It's very important that you never publish an exam until you are 100% ready for students to see it. If you have any revisions that need to be made to questions, if you have more questions that need to be added, never publish this, because then if you do, a student can start taking the exam that you haven't finished yet, and that leads to all sorts of other problems down the road. So just be aware of that. All right, having said that, I'm going to edit this quiz now since I've configured it. I'm going to edit it to go back to the same screen I was at before. This time I'm going to go to the Questions tab at the top, and I click on Questions. And here's where I can add new questions or look for questions in a bank of questions. We're going to go over question banks a little bit later in the course, or find questions. So I'm going to click on New Questions because this is just an exam that I'm going to create one question at a time. I'll click on Add New Question, and this is the interface that we get. By default, it's going to be set to multiple choice since that is the most popular. This should make a lot of sense. It's pretty basic stuff. Down a little lower, the first option is always automatically set as correct. So we do want to mix that up a little bit. To specify that this is actually the correct answer, we need to click on the little green arrow in front of it. Once I do that, Canvas knows that the multiple choice is the correct answer for this question. You can create more answers if you like. Once I've created a question, I do need to make sure I click on Update Question. Sometimes I'll have instructors that'll hit save at this point when they think that they're done, but if they do not update this question, it will not actually save this question and they'll have to start all over again. So you create one question at a time. Whenever you're done creating a question, always update the question, and then you're going to be brought back to this view. I'm going to create another question so that I can kind of show you the other types of questions that we have here. So there's multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, all of these options here. Some of these you will have to manually grade, such as an essay question, but some of these, like multiple choice, true, false, these are automatically graded as soon as the student submits the exam. You'll notice here as I'm creating questions, it automatically sets each question to be worth 1 point. You can change this if you like. You can have this worth 5 points. You can have it worth 1.5 points if you like to. You can really break that out as much as you want to. I'm going to leave that as 1. I'm going to update this question, and I'm going to add a new question. This time I'll make it an essay question. I'll have text in there for the specific prompt of the essay question. And this one I can actually make worth more points. It's an essay. So while my other questions are only worth 1 point, as you can see, this one will be worth 5 points. I'll update the question, save this. So now I have a quiz that's worth 7 points, 2 questions worth 1 point, 1 question worth 5 points. It adds those up automatically. If you want to see what this quiz looks like from a student perspective, you can click on Preview. So I click on Preview. We're going to see what this looks like. Answer each one. Next. Over here on the upper right-hand side, I can see direct links to specific questions. I can see what the timer is set to, how it's ticking down. I can hide that if it makes me nervous. I can see when the attempt is due. If I come across something like question 2 here, which has no information, I can, as I'm previewing it as an instructor, I can quickly come back up and keep editing this quiz. Go back to that. I can head back to my questions, go back to question 2, and edit question 2 because it doesn't have any information. By default, when you're looking at your questions in this interface and editing your exam, the question details are hidden. You can show question details here by checkmarking this, and then it'll expand each question. You can move these questions around if you like to reorder them. If you want these to be randomized, you're going to have to use a question bank, which we'll go over in a bit.